Welcome to We Are Venomaniacs, the Venom site's official podcast for all of your symbiote news, reviews, and point of views. In this podcast series, a few of the fan club's esteemed and brave members take to the airwaves to discuss symbiote-related comics, movies, cartoons, games, and more. We also provide new updates on fresh media and merch, all, of course, about symbiotes all the time. Every so often, we will go deep into the canon and mythology of symbiotes in comics. Have you ever wondered why symbiotes are weak against fire and sonics? Or how all of the seemingly conflicting interpretations on symbiote culture or history all fit together? And what the heck happened to Toxin when he merged with Rays? We'll get to all of that and more in due time. For now, let's get you up to speed. What is the Venom site? The Venom site, or TVS as you'll sometimes hear us call it, is the internet's premier and officially/unofficially recognized fan club for all things symbiote. If you like Venom, Carnage, or any of the other countless symbiote characters, the Venom site is your central hub to connect and geek out with fellow fans and get the latest news on symbiote merch and media. What is a Venomaniac? You are, if you like anything symbiote. Venomaniac is a fan-made nickname for symbiote fans, originating straight from the Venom site's own community. Now that all that is out of the way, let's get you to the part that we're all waiting for. I, Orion, Twitter handle @OrionStarboy, will be your host for this special episode, which is part 2 in our 2-part Venomverse special. In the last episode, I was joined by cartoonist Declan Shalvey, who talked about his Venom Punisher story for September's Venomverse War Stories anthology. In today's episode, we are joined by the Venomverse event ringmaster himself, Cullen Bunn. Cullen is writing the 5-issue Venomverse event series featuring Venom, aka Eddie Brock, and a band of alternate universe Venoms fighting for survival against a brand new enemy called the Poisons. Iban Coelho will join Cullen to bring the series to life with his kinetic art style. Cullen is also currently writing X-Men Blue, Monsters Unleashed, and Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe for Marvel, and Harrow County for Dark Horse, Regression for Image. Heck, it's getting difficult to keep track of all of your work these days. You're probably one of the busiest creators in comics right now, huh?
It absolutely feels that way.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Cullen. It's an honor to have you join us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So, just a brief background for any new Venomaniac listeners. Cullen is best known in the Venomaniac community for closing out the second half of Agent Venom's first series, Venom Volume 2, after Rick Remender's run. He's also worked with Carnage in the Superior Carnage Annual and the Deadpool vs. Carnage Limited series, which is a lot of fun and worth checking out. So to start off, let's talk about your work with symbiotes in general. Shortly after your run with Venom ended, you talked about what your plans were for the series, if it hadn't been cancelled. You mentioned things like an all-new anti-Venom, concluding the Descendants story, and the return of Crime Master, and something to do with Cal Hendricks, the mystery host who was Agent Venom before Flash Thompson was. Have any of those ideas been adapted for Venomverse?
They haven't. It's as I said way back when the series ended, there were definitely a lot of story ideas that I wanted to follow up on, and there's some that I've even tried to incorporate into other stories going forward, and just it's either gotten shot down or it just didn't work. With Venomverse, it's a very specific event and a very specific story, so it was kind of difficult to incorporate. And it's a series that we're trying to. We're hoping people can read this and not necessarily, maybe people who haven't necessarily read Venom stories up till this point can enjoy it as well. So it just wasn't a place where I could really add a lot of stuff like the Descent storyline, which would have required a lot of background material to be added in, and would have probably confused some, any fresh readers on the book.
Yeah, that's understandable. And so when Agent Venom left Earth to join the Guardians of the Galaxy, a fan asked you what you hoped would happen with Mania in the meantime. You were a co-creator with Mania along with Declan Shalvey. So your answer was pretty much something the Venomaniacs community was also hoping for, that she would get involved with Broxon, aka Eddie Brock as Toxin, and that maybe he'd take her under his wing. Now that Eddie's Venom once more, and we've seen from recent previews that you'll be bringing your own creation Mania into Venomverse, what will their relationship be like on the team?
Well, they're not necessarily going to be super friendly with one another. They're not going to be. There's no animosity necessarily between them, but my take on it, at least, is that Mania, when she looks at who Venom should be, Mania sees Flash. So she doesn't necessarily, while I had ideas that Toxin and Mania could be a cool team, she doesn't necessarily like the idea of Eddie Brock being in, Eddie Brock being with the symbiote, the Venom symbiote again. So she's not going to be giving him any hugs or high fives or anything. She's not going to be super friendly with Brock, because it's not her Venom, is the way she would describe it.
Hashtag not my Venom.
Yeah, in fact, honestly, we ended up changing it because it just didn't work in the script. It didn't work on the page. That page that everyone's seen, which is the double page spread with all the different versions of Venom sitting there.
Yeah.
Several of them have lines. Mania's original line in that scene was hashtag not my Venom. we ended up changing it because it didn't. It just wasn't playing. Playing right in the written form. Yeah. So we ended up changing it. But that was my original intent. Was her first line when Eddie appears there is hashtag not my Venom. But,
that's fantastic. Oh, so Robbie Thompson, the writer of Venom Space Knight, briefly revisited your Descent storyline at the end of his series by bringing back Mania into Agent Venom's life in a seemingly integral fashion. We learned that Venom's cleansing at the planet Clintar was incomplete, and that he was suffering from rage and corruption again because of its link to the Mania symbiote back on Earth, which was still suffering from demonic possession due to the Hellmark. The Clintar Collective, as I call the governing body of the Aegis of the Cosmos, tasked Agent Venom with returning to Earth to help free Mania of the corrupting influence of the Hellmark, so that Venom could be complete in his purification. But as we saw in Venom number 150, a monkey wrench was thrown into that storyline when Venom was forcefully separated from Flash, becoming a further corrupted symbiote during its time bonded with Lee Price, and it is now with Eddie Brock. So how will you address the overhanging plot of the Descent and Venom's redemption through Mania's salvation in Venomverse, if at all? I think you said that it's not something you want to address.
Well, just listen to this. As you were describing that, I wrote big parts of that story, of the story, and I was reading Robbie's run on Venom Space Knight. Even I got confused by the description, and that's the nice thing is about Venomverse as a writer and even for readers is that it takes place in such a limited span of time, and they have such a huge task ahead of them that they don't have time. The symbiotes don't necessarily have time to really dig into some of the storylines of what's going on in the main Marvel universe, or Mania's Hellmark and those kind of things don't necessarily have to play a huge big role in setting up what's going on right now. In this story, they are dealing with something that is actively trying to destroy them. And they have to put some of that aside and try to survive. Let me, I can just say this I don't think anybody would be surprised by this. I pitch Mania stories constantly to Marvel.
Yeah.
And every series that I've worked on for Marvel since Venom, I have pitched Mania guest starring or Mania appearing in the series. Monsters Unleashed originally had a big Mania storyline attached to it in the main event, and it just for various reasons those storylines keep falling to the wayside, or they get nixed, from editorial, for different causes.
Yeah.
The closest I've ever gotten, to getting back to Mania, was several years ago. There was honestly, I don't even know if this book ever came out. There was a Guardians of the Galaxy team up book, and I don't know if there was going to be. I can't remember if the series ever launched.
There was like a Guardians team up book,
yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
So I had been hired to write a single issue of Guardians team up, which was going to be, and my story was going to be Flash returning to Earth and meeting Mania, and there was going to be a lot of and I think there was going to be some action because Kraven the Hunter's I think his daughter was going to be trying to kill Mania for various reasons, but at the same time, Flash and Venom and Mania were going to be having this sort of heart-to-heart, because Mania just didn't understand why Flash had left her on Earth after he says, hey, I'm going to be around, don't worry, and then he abandons her. And I felt like that was going to be, that's something that needed to be addressed.
Yeah, exactly.
But the series ended up not going to the issue. I can't remember what number mine was going to be, but either the series, I guess if the series came out, it ended before my issue was going to come out. So it was never drawn. I think it never went past the outline stage for me. I don't think I ever really scripted any scenes of it, but I had it fully outlined of what that story was going to be.
Yeah, that was something that we were all looking forward to. Just Flash and Andy getting back together, and then Andy just going off on Flash like, you promised me that
right.
you were going to help me out, and then you went off into space.
Yeah, no, believe me, it is, every Marvel editor has heard me say, can we put Mania in this?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not just talking, I'm talking, I was trying to figure out ways to put her in X-Men Blue. I mean, I have pitched Mania stories for a long time now.
And there's a demand out there, There's a group of fans, including me. We all want to see Mania again. We want more Mania.
Well, she's one of my favorite characters. I think she's really interesting, and I think she never got the chance to. I mean, I know that Venom fans, Venomaniacs, as you call them, they connected with her because they were seeing it. But I don't know that she. I felt like she had potential to connect outside of. Beyond just people who were diehard Venom fans. I thought she could have built in, she could have, given the chance. I feel like Mania could definitely. I think she could hold her own series if we gave her a chance.
I mean, the fans, we all have this ideal that we want where it's Mania, it's Andy and Flash in the same series, and it's a whole adoptive father.
Sure.
And child, it works, because we've seen a little bit of that back when you were writing it, and we saw only a little bit of it at the end of Robbie Thompson's series.
Right.
And we want more of that. It's not just about the symbiotes or anything. It's like, because her father died, Flash is partly responsible for that, and
right.
Flash also loves her because we can see that he loves her, but we want to see more of that. Kind of father-daughter dynamic between them.
Well, it would have been an interesting. It would have been an interesting setup, especially considering Flash's own father issues.
Yes,
and I think that there was a lot there to following Flash trying to be the man his father wasn't. And I think I've said this many times. People know this. I think Flash, as much as I love the character, he's a screw up. See, he always screws everything up.
Yes.
He never does. He never succeeds where he should. So it's. But you never know when those things are going to happen too. That it may happen at some point. For now, I'm pleased that Mania. When we started pitching this series and talking about it, I was like, well, you can't not tell me to write Mania in this. Mania is going to be in it. So I was glad to finally be back to finally have the chance to write Mania again.
Yeah, that's perfect. And, I like that point about how you view Flash. He's a screw up and everything, and that's pretty much every single Venom host so far. Eddie Brock, Mac Gargan, Angelo Fortunato, whoever, they all are so self-destructive, and that's what's so interesting about the hosts and these characters.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of, if you think about it, it's kind of sad for the symbiotes that they have been linked. For the Venom symbiote especially, has been linked time and time again with these screw ups.
Yeah, exactly. So, you wrote some of the best Eddie Brock material in recent history back during your Toxin with a Vengeance arc with Declan Shalvey. It's still one of the most popular arcs from that series among Venomaniacs. I have no doubt that you'll be able to deliver even more quality writing for Eddie during Venomverse. What are some ideas that you didn't get to play with during your run with Venom Volume 2 that you get to return to in Venomverse regarding Eddie?
Well, first of all, thank you. That arc with Declan was one of my... It's my favorite arc as well. I'm not sure it necessarily has my favorite issues, but it was definitely my favorite total arc of that series. It's just a matter of this series lets me kind of just dive into Eddie a little bit more. I mean, Eddie's this. I guess you're right. He is a screw up. So he's, but we get to the thing I get to do with this series with Eddie is we're showing him in stark contrast to other hosts of a Venom symbiote, and we're showing how I don't think anybody. I mean, some people will probably say Eddie's a hero, but Eddie's not a great hero. He doesn't do it right. And if you refer back to that page where he's standing in front of all those different Venom hosts, he's right there next to Captain America, and you have to imagine how the Venom symbiote with Captain America is different than it would be with Eddie, who was famously the lethal protector, and it's fun for me to kind of have that comparison of what of Eddie with the Venom symbiote and Captain America or Old Man Logan. Yeah. These different characters, or Black Panther, and they're all very different in their in their attitudes. And Eddie we're most familiar with, but he's on other worlds you can imagine what a Venom symbiote with one of these other characters might have been like.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah, because when you go back to Robbie Thompson did a great thing with the Clintar's symbiote line. There's a whole storyline building off of Brian Bendis's storyline with Planet of Symbiotes. How the symbiotes are naturally drawn towards more virtuous characters. They're trying to make space knights. So
right.
Yeah, we're seeing these Venom symbiotes with different hosts like Captain America. It's like, that's a great combination. That's what they're aiming for. And then you have Eddie Brock here, who isn't the ideal vision of what a Clintar is looking for, but we're going to end up seeing why he's the best Venom, as you've said.
Yeah, he's in this series. He's not necessarily the most honorable Venom, so to speak, but he's the Venom they need to get through this.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not. I don't think it's spoilery for me to say when Venom gets into this situation, he's like, "Nah, I'm out. I don't know you people. I don't have anything. I don't want to have anything to do with the rest of you, and this isn't my fight." And that doesn't get him out of harm's way by any means.
Yeah.
But that's his initial instinct is, I don't know you people.
Yeah. I'm not one of you, so this ain't my business.
And that's actually exactly right. He doesn't feel like he's one of these people either. I mean, probably the one who's closest to him in that group. They're very, Mania and Eddie are very different kind of characters.
Yeah. So, another sort of Venom story you got to write was with Venompool in your Deadpool Secret Wars and Deadpool Back in Black. And I'm sure you're no stranger to my ire over this push for Deadpool.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I don't know, it's just the whole thing with, Deadpool now being a part of Venom's origins, like, okay. But, we briefly discussed that over Twitter. However, I'll admit that after reading both stories, I found them enjoyable, as long as I kept telling myself it's just a what if. But in Edge of Venomverse number 5, creative team Clay McLeod Chapman and James Stocco, I think that's how you say his name, Stocco?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seem to...
That's how I say it anyway. We may both be wrong.
They seem to be introducing us to another version of Venompool. Which version of Venompool will be part of Eddie's main team during Venomverse? If it isn't yours, will you be injecting a bit of your Venompool into Edge of Venomverse's Venompool?
Well, first of all, it's not a what-if story. That's officially Venom's origin. At least if you ever ask me. Now, other people are going to have other answers for that. But in my opinion, it is official canon history. But we'll move past that. The version of Venompool in this story is the one. It's the Venom you saw in the Edge of Venomverse stories. So it's not Deadpool from the main Marvel universe wearing the symbiote. It's not that character. It is actual Venompool from the Edge of Venomverse. Now, writing and he has a pretty significant role to play in this series. Writing him, it's tough for me not to inject a little bit of what I would, to some degree, I'm writing him as the Deadpool wearing the symbiote that I wrote before, but it's definitely a different character too. As I read him, I'm like, oh yeah, this is not the same guy, and I'm not writing the same guy. Although there may be a few small, traits that are similar between the two. But I'm definitely using the Edge of Venomverse Venompool in this one.
All right, and so the Poisons are Venom's newest predators to be introduced during this Venomverse event. Prior to them, Venom has gone up against two other symbiote predators, the Xenophage, which is one of the symbiote's natural predators who appeared in Venom the Hunted, one of the various 90s miniseries, and the Symbiote Slayers, another of your creations that debuted during the Toxin with a Vengeance storyline. I personally love how we're getting to see more symbiote-themed characters, especially their predators. A question that has been on many Venomaniacs' minds has been, are the Poisons strictly Venom's predators? Or are they a natural predator to the Clintar species?
That is a wonderful question. The answer is they are predators to Clintar. Now, as you'll see in this series, for specific reasons, there's a specific reason that you're seeing Venom-themed heroes in this series. But if we really dig down deep into it, and I don't want to. I can't give away too much about the poisons and the nature of the poisons and how they work. But once that is revealed and you kind of understand the poisons a little better, you'll see that it makes sense that they have to be predators to the Clintar. But in this series, in particular, they are predators to Venom symbiotes because of the way the story is set up and how these different characters get brought into this adventure.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So to clarify, the poisons are actually another symbiote race predator.
They are. How do I say? So I don't want to give away too much here. The poisons. It's interesting. I'm not even 100% sure you would call them a natural predator to the symbiotes. That'll give you something to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Are they natural predators or not? But they are definitely a huge threat to the symbiotes. But you'll have to see how they work a little bit. They are something completely new to the comics, and they are a huge threat. As you'll see right away, you'll see the kind of destructive capability of these creatures, and I think they'll leave a lasting mark on symbiote history, I believe.
Okay. And so now, as we have seen from recent art previews for Venomverse #1, an alternate universe Spider-Man bonded with the Venom symbiote suit will be part of the main team. It already looks like Eddie and this Peter Parker won't be getting along well. There also seems to be an interesting development for this Spider-Man early on in the event that will turn the tables on our Eddie and his team. What are your inspirations for Eddie's relationship with this other Spider-Man, and how could it possibly change Eddie or the Venom symbiote's opinion of the main 616 universe Spider-Man going forward?
So as I started working on this series, one of the nice things that I was able to do is I kind of can build personalities and histories for each of these characters, because Spider-Man in this series is obviously not our Spider-Man. But I started, and this is never something I never on page go out and say. This Spider-Man never says, my history is that I found a symbiote and then I met Eddie Brock and he tried to kill me, or he never says that. But in my mind, I know sort of a story for this Spider-Man, where he comes from, what he did, and how he lived his life, and how he interacted with both Venom and Eddie Brock. I kind of developed that for myself, if nothing else. And I decided that and the way this story played out in my mind, this Spider-Man really hates Eddie Brock and Venom. He doesn't trust him, doesn't like him. They have sort of there was an Eddie Brock in his world, and the two have a very tangled history with the Venom symbiote. So when Eddie shows up, this Spider-Man is the first to call him out and say, no, we're not working with this guy. I don't care what we're up against. This guy is bad news. And Eddie, says something to the effect of, I don't know who you think you're dealing with, but I'm not that guy. And that's an ongoing theme for Eddie. Is he that guy or not? Is he, what is, at the end of the day, what is Eddie Brock going to be? Is he going to be a hero, a villain, a lethal protector? Where is he falling, and how does he find out where he fits in this world of heroes? Yeah. And Spider-Man is the first to call him out on that, and kind of tell him, this is, the Eddie Brock I knew was a terrible person. Yeah. And you may say you're a different guy, but you're really that guy. And I think it kind of sets that up in Eddie's mind. You're right. There's some interesting developments with that Spider-Man early on, which helps cement some things in Eddie's mind, and kind of puts Eddie on. It sets Eddie apart from saying, I want to go home, to, all right, I'm here. Let's do what we've got to do.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so it's great because Eddie's had this long, almost 30-year history. Almost, not quite.
Not quite.
Yeah, the symbiote's been around for 30 years, almost next year. But but he's had this long history. We've seen him range from being a full-on villain to a lethal protector, and almost to heroic as anti-Venom.
Right.
So now he's getting this second chance again with Venom. He's trying to redefine himself, but he's the sort of character, as you called him, a screw-up, where he has his own faults. As I like to point out, it's all about he has daddy issues. He has definite daddy issues, in which he's constantly trying to prove himself better than what other people believe him to be. even though his methodology makes him not a great person.
Right.
So this sounds like it's going to be a real challenge for him, because Spider-Man, this alternate universe Spider-Man, who's known another Eddie Brock, who's just, I guess, terrible, as you could probably put it, is going to be like...
In my mind, just so you know, in my mind, the relationship between Spider-Man and Eddie, and this Spider-Man and Eddie, in their world, never really progressed beyond those initial, Eddie hated, the events. In my mind, I picture the events up until the moment where Eddie became Venom.
Yeah.
Those all played out the same.
Oh, okay.
And then their relationship, it never got beyond the. There was never any change between hated enemies on their world.
Yeah.
And there was sort of in my mind there was always an escalation, continuing escalation between these two, and you can almost see what that you can almost imagine if that animosity continued to escalate between the two, where that might have led, and it obviously led to Spider-Man having the Venom symbiote again. So that it's again, I'm never going to spell it out in this series. But I think your imagination can play where dark corners that could have gone between these two.
Yeah.
Because it's Spider-Man makes it no secret that he hates Eddie. When he gets there.
And that's very different from the main universe Spider-Man, because I've pointed out, and other people have pointed out, that Spider-Man is just a huge hypocrite when it comes to symbiotes and Eddie Brock. We've seen Eddie Brock change for the better in the past, and Spider-Man has forgiven him every now and then. But it seems like every time Eddie Brock or Venom shows up, main universe Spider-Man just gets all out of whack and just starts attacking Eddie for no reason. Like, okay, and then in this alternate Spider-Man, it seems like everything is justified. He's like, okay, yeah, I don't like Eddie Brock at all, and this is why. Whereas with Spider-Man, with main universe Spider-Man, it's just old scars that he refuses to just forgive and forget.
Yeah, that's how this is going to play out with them. So
yeah, okay. As I mentioned before, you created Mania along with Declan. She has a cult following of sorts among Venomaniacs, and a few of us devour every scrap of Mania content we can get, whenever and wherever we can get it. If you ever got the chance, would you write a Mania series or a series starring her, and what would you do with that opportunity?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, I would jump on the chance to write a Mania series. I don't know where I would go with it, but I think telling a very street level story with Mania kind of as the star, but also dealing with sort of these the issues that a young woman deals with in real life, I think could be it would kind of turn some of the what made Peter Parker as a young character, becoming Spider-Man so interesting, was dealing with real life versus being a hero. And I would love to see a character like Mania dealing with real life, but also dealing with being this sort of anti-hero character. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, in a heartbeat, I would write a Mania series if ever given the chance.
Yeah, I could definitely see her struggling with the concept of power and responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, and Mania is very much she's impatient. She's impatient. She's bored with life, and I think that would be an interesting host to really dig in with for a symbiote.
Yeah. All right, so I think now's a great time to shift over to the co-host and community questions. Let's start with a question from co-host Carlos, Twitter handle @BlackFlameF50. He says, "Hi Cullen, been a fan of your work since Venom number 23, when you first took over the series. Now that you've been writing the biggest Venom story of the summer, who would you say is your favorite Venomized character in the whole story arc, and why?"
So in the whole Venomverse story arc,
yes.
It's easy for me to say Mania because she's always going to probably be my favorite. But and she's a lot of fun in this series. She's obviously not the star of the series, but she gets to interact with the other characters in some nice ways, and I think she brings an interesting dynamic to the book. And I also think it would be cheating for me to say Eddie.
Yeah.
Surprised me. The character that surprised me that I liked so much is Rocket Raccoon. I like the character Rocket, but I didn't realize how much I would like him as a Venom host.
Yeah.
And how much I would like him in this story. He plays a significant role in the story, and I feel like he's a little bit of again. I was able to work up sort of backstories for all these characters that I'm never going to, at least in the confines of this miniseries, I don't get to tell you those backstories.
Yeah.
And Rocket has sort of an interesting, really tragic backstory that comes across, I hope, in his character. It's stuff that you just kind of have to accept that, okay, this character has some sort of, some tragic stuff in his past. And it's turned him into this version of Rocket Venom. But he's been a lot of fun for me in this series.
Great. Yeah, because we only saw like a brief bit of a Venomized Rocket back when Bendis was writing the Guardians of the Galaxy during the Planet of the Symbiote story arc, when Venom was just host hopping the Guardians of the Galaxy. And we saw only a brief little bit of that, and we could see, how dangerous the Venom symbiote could be on Rocket Raccoon. He's in the vents.
Right.
So another co-host question is from Tyler, Twitter handle Cliche Arbiter. He says, based on your description of the symbiote of the poisons, it sounds like they would target all symbiotes, not just Venom. Is there any reason that this is Venomverse instead of Symbioteverse, featuring fan pages such as Toxin, Scorn, and Anti-Venom, especially now that we know from a recent solicitation that Carnage will be involved? And I know you answered some of this before, but...
That's all right. Do we know what solicit are you talking about?
I think it's
solicited?
I think it's number 4, I believe.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. But there's a reason that Venom. First of all, I think we can all understand that from a business and marketing point of view, Venomverse is hopefully going to sell better than Symbioteverse as a title.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's a reason in this story that it's Venom symbiotes, and you'll see what the reason is pretty early on. Not necessarily first issue, you'll find out, but there's a reason that Venom symbiotes are the main players in this story. Could it have been focused on every symbiote? It absolutely could have, and there were versions of this story when I was kind of putting the initial conceptual. I was originally conceptualizing the story. There were absolutely versions that dealt with symbiotes across the board. There were versions that dealt with spider slayers that you mentioned earlier. There were tons of different versions, but we kind of hammered the story out to what you're going to get here. And there's absolutely a reason that it's focused on Venoms, but you'll have to see what that is as the story unfolds.
All right. And our last co-host question comes from John, Twitter handle @VenomKnight. As an Agent Venom and Mania fan, I'm ecstatic to see them in the previews for Venomverse. Were these personal editions, and what kind of role will they have in Venomverse?
So the entire cast that was put up there, it was a cast I suggested. For the most part, there were a couple of characters because as this was going on, they were getting stories in. As I was developing this story, they were getting stories in for Edge of Venomverse, and there were some characters who appeared on variant covers, I guess. Like the Ghost Rider Venom was on a variant cover and stuff like that. So I pulled characters from those variant covers. I wanted those to be major players in the story, and then I was able to add a few others that I thought would be great additions in some way or another. So that's where Mania, that's where Agent Venom comes from. They they each have a role to play. Mania has of those two. If you mention Agent Venom and Mania has the bigger role to play. I try to give each of the characters that you see there some screen time or some page time, and make sure that you can enjoy those characters. But I will tell you that not everybody's going to make it through this one. It's that cast that you see on that double page spread is going to it's going to be much smaller by the end of the story.
All right. Okay, before I move on to the next question, I just wanted to see, I know this might be a bit spoilery for you to reveal or anything, but regarding the Agent Venom and Mania that we have seen, for sure we know that Agent Venom is not our main universe Flash Thompson. That has to be an alternate, but how about the Mania?
I don't think it's, maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but I'll go ahead. It's Mania from our universe. Yes. It is main universe Mania.
Oh, so, that's great.
There are two characters that are starring role, and it is.
Oh, you're cutting out there a bit.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It is Mania. It's Andy and Eddie. Those characters are from the main Marvel universe.
Perfect. Wow. Yeah, that's something we've been tackling this entire time. Is because Mania is connected to Venom. It's the She-Venom clone from Daniel Way's series. So it's if Venom's getting pulled into Venomverse, Mania logically should be getting pulled in as well. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, the Agent Venom obviously isn't, because he currently doesn't have the Venom symbiote. Yes. So he's from another world.
And I can already think of how interesting that dynamic will be. Our universe meeting up with this alternate universe Agent Venom. How familiar she may be with him.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So now we have a question from Venomaniac Asura from TVS. Since some incarnations of Venom are wholly heroic, including Symbiote Spider-Man, Flash Thompson, and as Agent Venom or Space Knight Venom, and others are wholly villainous, including Ultimate Venom, Mac Gargan, how much infighting can we expect to see?
There's some infighting between these characters for sure, but it's also, they're in a situation where they have to put some of that behind them pretty quickly, and the main cast for the most part is heroic, but that said, keep in mind that we've seen several Venoms right there, but and they're all heroic characters for the most part. But you can imagine that if you're spanning the multiverse, there's got to be some non-heroic symbiote characters out there as well. Yeah. And we are going to be dealing with some of that too.
Interesting. And TBS Venomaniac Eddie's Mullet, awesome username by the way.
Yeah, that's a great name.
Yeah. He asks, or she asks, I don't know who it is, he or she. During the Agent Venom run, you and other creators dug into symbiote lore quite a bit. Can we expect more of the same in Venomverse?
Yeah, to some degree. It's I'm not going to get as deep into it necessarily as we would have in a Venom series. This is more a matter of it absolutely builds, it adds something new to the Venom mythos, I think, but I'm not going to be digging in a huge way into like the history or where any more from where the Clintar came from and stuff like that. Although, believe me, there's some interesting developments on the horizon.
Great. All right, I think that's about time to wrap things up. You can check out Venomverse by Cullen Bunn and Ivan Coelho beginning September 6th, 2017. And before we go, a special note. Get pumped for the biggest symbiote event of the summer by listening to the official Venomverse Spotify playlist. Marvel Music curated a fantastic hard-rocking playlist of classics from the likes of Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Metallica, Joe Satriani, Rob Zombie, and more artists to play along as you read Venomverse. Download Spotify and check out the official Venomverse playlist today. Thank you again to Cullen for guest hosting on this episode. It was a great pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And thanks to the Venom site for permitting us to make this podcast under the TVS banner and all of your generous support. And finally, thank you, loyal listeners and fellow Venomaniacs. You guys make an awesome community, and it's an honor to be your voice on the airwaves. Together, we are Venomaniacs.